across the country, provinces are steamrolling ahead with radical gender medicine policies. They often ignore mounting evidence and international reviews, or even basic principles of medical ethics. Nova Scotia is definitely no exception. The province met with Dr. Hilary Cass while they were doing their gender-affirming care policy. Hilary Cass, whose landmark review cast doubt on the complete suite of practices for gender-affirming care, but Nova Scotia didn't really seem like they cared all that much and doubled down on their processes. They refused to disclose the meeting with Dr. Hilary Cass in the FOI documents that they sent me. That was pretty clear. And they aligned their policies with the WPATH standards, which is hardly medicine. And yes, they did confirm in writing that minors are being approved and funded for genital surgeries. Joining me today is Mia Hughes, the journalist behind the WPATH files, who's been tracking this medical scandal with surgical precision. In this episode, we're going to break down what really happened behind closed doors in Nova Scotia and what it can tell us about activist capture of our institutions and what we might be able to do to stop it. I'm Melanie Bennett. This is Disrupted. Hi, Mia. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been wanting to talk to you for quite some time because I've been looking into the new gender-affirming care healthcare policy in Nova Scotia. And I have found a number of activists involved in the healthcare reforms. And this was happening around the time that Dr. Hilary Cass was actually looking into some of the data, but it also was going on during the period where she published her report. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Cass review came out in April of 2023.
The final report came out April 2024. We had an interim report, I think, early 2023.
Yeah. So they would have been aware, so Nova Scotia would have been aware of some of the research that was coming out around that time regardless. And what I found curious is I heard through the grapevine a rumor that Dr. Hilary Cass was had perhaps met with some of the officials at Nova Scotia Health regarding some of the research that she was looking into, some of her reviews. So I put in an FOI and I said, did you in fact meet with Dr. Hilary Cass, and could I have meeting minutes, could I have presentations, whatever happened during that time? And lo and behold, they did. And some of the things that were in there I found quite curious because they met with Hilary Cass in April of 2023. So that would have been during the interim period. Yeah. And I don't know if you knew this, but in my other article, I think I shared some information about who was consulted. And there was a long list of people that were consulted over a couple of years. And that did end in early 2024, I believe. So that would have been before the full publication. But in that list of consultees, I didn't see anything about Hilary Cass at all. So that was actually kept out of the public eye, or wasn't actually included within this report. So you had a chance to look into the FOI that I received. What do you think?
Well, I did look at it. It's nice that this information is publicly available now. Like, we've known about it behind the scenes for a long time, but Hilary Cass was the only name that was there. To my understanding is that Hilary Cass was there. Perhaps Dr. Stephen Levine was there. Erica Anderson, who's a trans-identified male, but has spoken out very strongly against pediatric medical transition. And so it's interesting that the information is there because we knew it was happening at the time. And let's be clear on this. Nova Scotia Health did not invite Hilary Cass to talk. What actually happened was a group of Canadians who are very dedicated behind the scenes, who understand this medical scandal, arranged the meeting because they knew that Nova Scotia Health was updating its policy on so-called gender-affirming care, and they wanted the province to understand the truth about this. So they arranged the meeting. What you can tell from the FOIA request, the response, it looks like Nova Scotia Health tried to wiggle their way out of it with some kind of bureaucratic...
Hilary Cass. Let me read from that. So It says here in the emails, so we'll bring this up. It says here in the emails that the Canadian Gender Report arranged this meeting. Okay, so those are the people that you're talking about. And Dr. Hilary Cass, for some reason or other that's unclear in this FOI, requested a letter. And this is days before the meeting actually happened. Nova Scotia Health came out and said, I'm not sure this is appropriate because we're not asking for her expertise.
Right. They did not ask her. They didn't want, from what I can tell, they didn't really want to talk to her, but they were being forced to, and they tried to get their way out of it by the technicality of this letter. I think the reason they didn't feel that her expertise was required is because first of all, you've got to understand how activist-driven Nova Scotia gender medicine is. So you've got that organization Pride Health. Have you seen those guys who are just basically...
I covered it in my reporting. Yeah.
They're basically shaping all of it. They consult with various other activist groups. It's all activist-led. Nova Scotia Health had already done their chosen consultations, making sure that their approach to gender medicine aligns. They're so proud of it that it aligns with WPATH Standards of Care 8. And so they didn't really want this to go ahead anyway. But then they were forced into it. I believe they had absolutely no intention of listening because they have this... The science is settled in Canada. The science on gender medicine, we've got it right. Anyone who opposes it, in whatever nation that they're in, they're only opposing it because they're a bunch of transphobic bigots, and therefore we won't listen to them because we're so much better than everyone else. We're the ones who are doing it right. That's the mentality in Nova Scotia. That's the mentality in other places in Canada. So of course they didn't want to listen to Hilary Cass. And I think they had the meeting, and my understanding is this meeting went on for hours. It was hours and hours of experts giving a different opinion to what they would have heard from the activists. And they listened to absolutely none of it. I think they went through the
experts. I'll include there was also parents of trans kids from Nova Scotia, but also detransitioner from Nova Scotia in there as well. So it wasn't just the experts.
Yeah, again, but it's just, we all do it, I suppose. We filter out the information that doesn't align with our strongly held beliefs. You have to actively fight against that. It's a psychological mechanism that we all suffer from. And they obviously didn't listen to any of it because in July 2023, they come out with their updated guidelines policy on gender affirming care, and it's all WPATH Standards of Care 8. And I think in your reporting, was it the lady Stacey, someone, she says, I had a look at Standards of Care 8, WPATH Standards of Care 8, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. It's like, did you see the eunuch chapter? You didn't see anything wrong with a eunuch chapter?
Yeah. So some of the things that Hilary Cass brought up in the meeting is all of the stuff that she brought up in the meeting, looking at those slides, were essentially a boiled down version of the report that came out later. So she's talking about the strength of the evidence. We got the pyramid there explaining that most of the evidence for gender affirming care is under a standard, that the systematic reviews don't have a lot of data behind it. And through showing some of that evidence, she talks about some false assumptions about the affirmative model. And some of those false assumptions, curiously, are some of the things that the Nova Scotia Health did put forward for their gender affirming care policy. And that's certain things like, this is Dr. Hilary Cass. She says the role of psychiatry is psychology to inform and to assess readiness for treatment. Now, in the new gender affirming care policy for Nova Scotia, that is exactly what they were pushing for. That includes minors. So if the minor says that they are ready, in fact, Stacey Burgess, the person you were talking about, when I asked her if they were doing bottom surgeries on minors, and she said yes, she pointed to me to their policy, which said if they're a minor and they show that they're ready, then we go ahead and do it. But they knew this. They knew this well before they actually put that in place, and they did it anyway.
Of course, but then the thing is, you can only choose one side, I suppose, is the point I want to make. Like, if you're following WPATH, you absolutely must reject everything that Cass and whoever else was in that meeting. You got to reject it because it's in direct contradiction. And it's not like there's a middle ground. It's not like you can take a little bit from WPATH and a little bit from Cass. You cannot. You absolutely must pick a side, and Nova Scotia clearly has picked their side. They picked WPATH. I mean, performing surgeries on minors, look at WPATH Standards of Care 8. There's only one minimum age recommendation, and that's phalloplasty. You can get an arm flesh appendage attached to your groin at 18. They recommend no younger than 18. But other than that, there are no lower recommendations, and that's WPATH. In fact, Marcy Bowers is famous for saying that the best age to have vaginoplasty, the best age to have your penis inverted is 17, because you're finishing high school but you haven't gone off to university yet. You're in your parents' house, and they can look after you during the arduous recovery process. So of course they're going to be on that side. That you can't be both. You've got to choose one or the other, and look at where they are.
Yeah. It's very, very clear looking at the policy changes, the gender transgender care policies in Nova Scotia, that they've definitely taken an activist pathway and they're ignoring scientific evidence. That's clear. But you mentioned the WPATH files, which you wrote, and one of the things that came out to me, you didn't mention it, but I'm going to mention it. One of the things that popped out to me when I was doing my research is that Nova Scotia employs one of the people in your WPATH files, the GRS clinic, Pierre Brassard. Pierre Brassard is the one doing some of the bottom surgeries. And I found it very curious, and you might not have an answer to this, but we'll talk about it anyway. When I was told that, yes, we were confirmed that minors are in fact being approved and funded for bottom surgeries. And these are male, so these are vaginoplasties, oophorectomies, and penectomies, okay?
Orchiectomies,
thank you very much. It was with Pierre Brassard. So I obviously asked the GRS clinic, are you in fact carrying out these surgeries on minors? And after asking Burgess over at Nova Scotia Health. Now, Burgess did respond to me, and that made it into the article, but GRS clinic responded to me weeks after I'd published. So he didn't really make an amendment, but he said no. He said, we don't do it on anyone under the age of 18, which tracks with the WPATH files, because in your reporting, he says the same thing. He's saying, no, of course we don't. They're talking about doing it for 16 and over in there, and they said, no, we don't. So I can't tell what's going on. It seems to me there's somebody who's not telling the truth. And I'm sharing this because I'm hoping that other people will pick up on this and maybe put a bit of pressure on Nova Scotia Health to find out what's going on. But somebody's not telling the truth.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. You see, my problem is, for me, there's no difference between inverting the penis of a 17-year-old or inverting the penis of a 19-year-old. Both are a crime. Both are as big a crime as the other. Like, to me, you're so immature. Before age 25, we all know this, but I mean, even I think inverting anyone's penis is a crime. But at least under age 25, I struggle to even disentangle them. I struggle to pull them apart. So I do remember he was in conversation with Bowers. That was that whole conversation in WPATH files where Bowers is saying, oh yeah, 17's the best age. And he's like, under 18. Who cares? Doing it to an 18-year-old, that's a crime. Doing it to a 19-year-old, that's a crime. Doing it to anyone who is mentally compromised is a crime. So I think I believe them. If he says he's not doing it to anyone under 18, I guess I believe him. I give him the benefit of the doubt. But the fact that he's doing it to someone 18 and over, that I hold against him.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with what you're saying, but when I put out the article about doing bottom surgeries on minors, that it was confirmed by one of the heads of Nova Scotia Health who spearheaded this, I thought that that would have got more traction, and it didn't. And part of me wonders, what can we do to get Canadians to pay attention? Because that's supposed to be illegal. We keep getting told it's not happening. We were told for a while the mastectomies weren't happening, and those are happening on scale in Nova Scotia, and that's confirmed in the data. But they also seem to be confirming that we're doing another thing we're told wasn't happening, which is bottom surgeries on minors, which is in fact illegal. So if that's the case, they're doing something illegal over there in Nova Scotia, and nobody seems to care all that much.
Is it actually illegal? I don't know. If you're following WPATH standards of care, if that's what you're saying openly, then sure, you're doing it to minors, because WPATH standards of care has no lower limits. They have no lower limits.
Say that then that's not allowed. So maybe it's not illegal. I don't know. But the feds do say in their own guidance that absolutely shouldn't be happening. So I'd be curious if that is happening. I'd like to know what would those consequences be.
Yeah, isn't health provincial though?
Mm-hmm.
I think
there's some guidance, federal guidance. I don't know how that would actually impact a province at all.
Yeah, for me, the whole issue has to come down to: is it medicine? Is it medicine if it's not medicine for a 17-year-old, is it medicine for a 23-year-old? Is it medicine for a 30-year-old? And whenever I think it all the way through to the end, I just come back to the fact that no, it's not. Because first of all, no one knows what they're treating. You don't know, there's no diagnosis. It's just you're medicalizing a self-declared political identity that is part of a cultural fad. So you don't know what you're treating. You have no follow-up to say that there is a positive outcome. You have no follow-up to say that it's safe or beneficial in any way. You have no decent studies, randomized control trials to show that the medicalized route is better than the non-medicalized route. Literally all of it is not medicine. And so that's where you need to reach Canadians. They need to understand that they need to stop accepting the fact that this is the best way to treat people who identify as transgender, and they need to start demanding proof. If you're telling me that that's the best way to treat someone who identifies as trans, show me the evidence. Don't just expect me to believe it. Yeah,
Lois Cardinal is suing Pierre Brassard because he says that he wasn't prepared. He wasn't given basically that there was no informed consent in this particular instance, right? So maybe the question is that we have to bring more cases forward. Who knows? Maybe that's the approach. But I thank you so much for joining me today, Mia, and hopefully some more intrepid sleuths might be looking into this a little bit more deeply.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a shame that my episodes are so short. Mia and I had a really great conversation after we stopped recording, and she made it very clear to me that perhaps it doesn't really matter whether these policies are legal or illegal. The fact is that they're following WPATH SOC 8, and even if there was legal cases brought forward, doctors can easily say, it's not malpractice, I was following WPATH. So that was something really interesting that I learned off camera, that maybe it's worth us all knowing. We need to start asking questions. Why our doctors are being led by activists who aren't even following medicine? That'll be a discussion for another day. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and join us next week for another episode of Disrupted.